It's the 12th of June 2020. Before we start, I'd just like to go through a few matters, starting off with sort of Skype meeting etiquette. To minimise background noise and ensure everyone can be heard, can I ask everyone to mute their microphones when they're not speaking? Can everybody introduce themselves before they speak, just to make sure that we can identify every person when they're having their say? Can you address other participants by name, as this will keep the conversation flowing and everyone can be heard? Please speak loudly and clearly to ensure everyone can hear you. You're asked not to interrupt others, and please let others finish speaking before you offer any thoughts of your own. There is an instant message facility. We ask that the use of this is kept at a very minimum and only used if for some reason you need to get the attention of myself or the chairman. Otherwise, we ask that you don't use that facility. Please give the meeting your full attention. Obviously, activities such as typing may sort of create distracting noises. And finally, on this matter, anyone who persistently interrupts or is disrupting the meeting will be asked to leave or may be removed from the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and will be capable of repeated viewing. The entirety of the meeting will be filmed except for confidential or exempt items. If you're attending the meeting, you will be deemed to have consented to being filmed and that the images and sound recordings could be used for webcasting or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. So as I said, welcome everybody. This is this subcommittee is being held to hear an application for the grant of a new premise licence for premises at Shotley Vineyard at Shotley, and the applicant is, I've lost the name of the applicant.
Mr. and Mrs. Mills?
Yes, Mr. Mills. That's under the company name, isn't it? Goldcrest, that's right, thank you very much. The first or the second item, before I go to the second item, I'll just advise of the procedure that we'll be following. It'll be in accordance with regulations 15 and 16 of the hearings regulations of 2005. And briefly, it will follow as follows. After introductions, the licensing officer will provide a quick report detailing the application before the subcommittee today. The applicant will then have an opportunity to address the subcommittee and also address any of the objections that have been submitted ahead of the committee that have all been submitted in writing. The subcommittee and other attendees to the subcommittee may then ask questions of that presentation, and then in turn other objectors or other people attending to support the application will also be given a similar opportunity to make their representations, and again there will be an opportunity to ask those parties questions on their representations. At the end, the applicant will have the final say to sum up their application, and the subcommittee will then retire with myself to deliberate their decision, and then we will come back to the open subcommittee to announce what that decision is. So item 2 of the agenda actually says election of a chairman, but as Councillor Mark Newman is the chairman of the full Licensing and Regulatory Committee, he automatically chairs this subcommittee. So Councillor Newman, I now hand over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Apologies for absence. That'll be the Covenants Officer. Karen, please.
No apologies received, Chair.
Any declarations of interest?
None from Councillor Carbondale.
None, yeah? Okay.
None from, just had to find the mouse on it. Okay.
Okay. Right, I'd like to introduce ourselves. I'm Mark Newman and I'm chairman, and I'd like to go down the list of everyone can introduce themselves.
And I'm Councillor Sue Carpendale, Ward Member for Cable St Mary.
And I'm Councillor Peter Beer, Member for Great Cornard.
And the officers, please.
As already mentioned, I'm Nigel DeLeon, I'm the legal advisor to the subcommittee.
David.
David Price, Licensing Officer.
And Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Karen Sayer, Governance Officer.
And Catherine.
Catherine's not joining us, I don't think, but I'm here. I'm Emma Richbell. I'm the Assistant Manager, Food Safety and Licensing.
All right, lovely, thank you. Could the applicants introduce themselves, please?
Hello, I'm Charlotte Davant-Mills, applicant. I'm also here with my husband, Craig Mills.
Okay. Have you got? Sorry, do you want to speak, Mr. Mills?
I need to introduce myself. Yeah, so Craig Mills, fellow director of Goldcrest, fellow applicant.
Okay. Can you confirm receipt of all the relevant paperwork?
Yes, I can confirm receipt.
Right. The other persons in the meeting, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name's Alexia Walker. I'm a resident and a supporter of the application. I'm known as Sasha.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got someone else. Is it Gwen? We've got some other people want to introduce themselves?
Yep, hi, my name is Simon Hewitt. I'm a nearby resident to the site. I lodged an objection, but I have subsequently seen what I think is a new document, Appendix D, so I'll be modifying my position when given the opportunity to speak.
Okay, so is there anyone else here? No? Was there Gwen? Was there a Gwen?
I don't think she's joined the meeting, Chair.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Right. Let's have a look. Does any parties of the hearings wish to withdraw either their application or their representation?
I won't be withdrawing my application.
No, that's great. That's all we like. Question to the licensing office. Have there been any requests from parties for permission to call witnesses?
Chair, you need to go to the other persons before skipping on coming to me. So you need to go to Sasha and Simon first.
All right, sorry. Sasha and Simon, do you wish to speak later?
Yes, this is Simon Hewitt here. Yeah, I'd like to just say a few words, yes.
Okay, and Sasha, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to speak too.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I think we just need to clarify whether any of those parties wish to withdraw any of their representations.
Okay, sorry about that. Would you, Sasha, would you like to draw any of your representations?
No, I wouldn't.
And Simon, would you?
No, but as I said, I would like to modify my position, but some of it remains. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, question to the licensed officer. Have there been any requests for the parties for permission to call witnesses?
No, Chair.
Okay. Have the parties indicated they wish to present documents?
None received, Chair.
Okay. Applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Mills, what sort of time do you estimate you'd like to speak for?
I don't think it'd be longer than 5 minutes.
Oh, that's great. The other people, Sasha, how long do you think you'd want to speak for?
Hello, just hopefully 3 or 4 minutes.
All right. And Simon, the same?
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll move to the hearing. Would the licensing officer like to present the case, please?
Chair, I shall summarise the report and the matter in hand. I won't go through the report verbatim. I shall jump around, so you have to bear with me.
Yeah.
This hearing is to determine an application made for the grant of a new premises licence made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Goldcrest Agriculture and Property Limited in relation to the premises of Shotley Vineyard, Frog Valley, Shotley in Ipswich. The application was received by the Licensing Authority on the 17th of April 2020, and a copy of this is attached to this report as Appendix A. The application has been subject to the statutory consultation period as prescribed by regulation. The notices advertising the application have been on display at the premises and published in the East Anglian Daily Times, the 20th of April 2020 edition. The information provided with the application outlines that the sale and supply of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises, late night refreshment indoors, films indoors and outdoors, recorded music indoors and outdoors, and live music indoors and outdoors is proposed as part of a vineyard with online sales, tastings, tours, food and wine pairing events and weddings. Full details of the proposed activities and timings and the steps proposed in the operating schedule are contained within the application form attached as Appendix A to this report. The operating schedule steps proposed by the applicant to promote the licensing objectives are listed at Part M of the application form. A hearing is necessary to determine the application following receipt of representations which have not been withdrawn. The subcommittee will be aware that its consideration is confined to the promotion of the four licensing objectives, and the need or commercial demand for licensed premises are not a consideration for the licensing authority when discharging its functions, as outlined by the Secretary of State at paragraph 14.19 of the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act. In carrying out its functions, the licensing authority must have regard to its statement of licensing policy published under Section 5 of the Act and any guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182. The licensing authority must carry out its functions under the Act with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Where revisions are made to the legislation or guidance issued by the Secretary of State, there may be a period of time when the local statement of licensing policy is inconsistent with these revisions. In these circumstances, the licensing authority will have regard and give appropriate weight to the relevant changes, guidance, and its own statement of licensing policy. The subcommittee will be aware of Human Rights Act 1998 considerations, specifically Article 6 for the applicant and Articles 8 and 1 of Protocol 1 for those raising representations when determining applications for the grant of a new licence. Members of the subcommittee will be aware that the Licensing Act is not the primary mechanism for the general control of nuisance and antisocial behaviour by individuals once they are away from the licensed premises, and therefore beyond direct control of the individual, club or business holding the licence, certification or authorisation concerned. Nonetheless, the Licensing Act 2003 contributes towards a holistic approach to the management of the evening and nighttime economy, as outlined by the Secretary of State at paragraph 14.3 of the guidance issued under Section 182, and Babergh District Council Statement of Licensing Policy at 1.9. Members of the subcommittee will be aware of the statutory guidance at 14.64 and 14.65, which states that licensing and planning are different regimes, and neither is bound by the other's decisions. There are circumstances when a condition of planning permission, a terminal hour has been set for the use of the premises for commercial purposes. Where these hours are different to the licensing hours, the applicant must observe the earlier closing time. Premises operating in breach of the planning permission would be liable for prosecution under planning law. Public nuisance is given its statutory meaning in many pieces of legislation. However, under the Licensing Act, it is not narrowly defined and retains its broad common law meaning, as outlined by the Secretary of State in its guidance at 2.16. The Licensing Authority general approach to considering licensing hours is contained within Section 6 of the Local Statement of Licensing Policy, and Section 7 guides on relevant representations. The Licensing Authority has received no representations from any of the responsible authorities under the Act. However, Environmental Health, as a responsible authority under the Act, have undertaken mediation on their areas of concern, and the outcome of their mediation is attached as Appendix D to this report. There have been 9 representations in total received by other persons, and these are attached as Appendix B to this report. The subcommittee, having regard to the representations made, may take such the steps, if any, are considered appropriate for the promotion and licensing objectives. These are to grant the licence subject to conditions which are consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application, modified to such an extent as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion and licensing objectives, and subject to any mandatory conditions which must also be included in the licence, or to exclude from the scope of the licence any licensable activities to which the application relates, or to refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor, or lastly to reject the application. For these purposes, conditions on the licence are modified if any of them are altered or omitted, or any new condition is added. Any party aggrieved by the decision of the licensing authority in respect of this application has a statutory right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court, and that concludes the officer summary.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask questions. Mr. or Mrs. Mills, do you have any questions of the licensing officer?
No, I don't have any questions.
Sasha Walker, do you have any questions for the licensing officer?
No questions, sir.
Simon Hewitt, do you have any questions?
No, thanks. It's fine.
Right. Peter, do you have any? Peter Beer?
No.
Sue Carpendale, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Well, could the applicant put their case then, please? Mr. and Mrs. Mills?
Okay. I've just prepared a short statement just to hopefully give you a little bit of a feel for the business and our journey so far. We took over the vineyard in 2017 and began regenerating the site, which hadn't been tended for some years. This is a long-term project and we're invested in the area. We've lived in Shotley for over 30 years and have owned Valentine Cottage next to the church and the vineyard since 2011. As a family, we're very much embedded in the local community. As with most agriculture, the vineyard requires a degree of diversification in order to be sustainable. It's important that we have a premises licence in order to ensure the sustainability of the vineyard. Adverse weather conditions would have a huge impact on the vines, so it's important for us to have another dimension to the business. Our main priority is and always will be the vines, which is evident by us recently agreeing to a 15-year lease on a larger plot of land. We wish to diversify to mitigate and manage those bad years, just as our arable farming neighbours would. We were granted planning permission in October 2018, which permitted us to host glampers and allowed us to build a barn. The barn will have a wine tasting area, facilities for glampers, and a storage area for vineyard equipment and machinery. An application for a premises licence is the next step for our business. It's crucial to our business that we obtain a premises licence so we can trade and move into the next phase of our business. Our wine currently resides in a winery unable to be sold. Although this application has received representations, we have support from neighbours and the wider community. Numerous people comment on how we are improving the area and doing something which will encourage investment and directly benefit other local businesses. We have a local business advertising the vineyard on their holiday rental website. Upon review of the representations, it appears the main concerns relate to prevention of public nuisance and public safety. This is on the basis of noise disturbance and behaviour once alcohol has been consumed. I have been working closely with Babergh and the Environment Protection Team on Part M of the application. This considers all of the licensing objectives and how the business can be run in accordance with these. There is already a management plan in place, which was a requirement of our planning permission. I've read through the representations and note that a lot of the concerns are the same as we received when we were going through our planning application. I would like to say to our neighbours who have raised concerns, especially around noise, that we are already limited in our planning with events where noise levels may be raised. and we have been in contact with the Environment Protection Team. So the agreement we have reached with the Environment Protection Team will reassure neighbours, whilst also allowing us to run events complementary to the vineyard. We wish to gradually build the business while maintaining a close relationship with Babergh District Council and other relevant authorities. We have purposely restricted ourselves in respect of the weddings and glamping and have documented a comprehensive management plan to ensure no or little disruption. Growing grapes is our main priority and always will be. I can't stress enough our love and our passion for the surrounding area and how committed we are to ensure a minimum amount of disruption for neighbours, members of the public and our own family, as we are also neighbours to the vineyard. Thank you.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Right, Peter Beard, do you have any questions?
No, that caught me off a bit guard. Not really. Just can the applicant clarify, it's really to remind me, they live sort of on the premises right beside it or something, don't they? Could you just confirm whether that's still the case?
Yes, we are in close proximity to the vineyard.
Thank you.
Okay. Sue Carpendale, would you like to ask any questions?
If I may, please, yes. I do have several, some of which are for clarification, some I suppose might be just curiosity, if I may. You've told us that you took over the vineyard in 2017. I'm curious to know where you actually make the wine, where you bottle it, and where it's stored.
The grapes actually at the moment go to a winery in Sussex.
Right.
They could go to all manner of places. Last year, I would say, was our first proper harvest because we got around 22 tonnes off the site. The year previous to that, we didn't get as much because we were still regenerating the site, so we didn't expect such a large harvest. But they could go all over the country to different wineries. We do have someone interested in London as well, but we don't have a winery on site.
Right. So it's not, when it is bottled, it's not on site either. It's not stored on site.
Some in the future may be sold on site because if we do get our licence, I would have to have some stock on site in order to do tastings.
Indeed, yes. Can I query what you mean in your application by where you have to indicate indoors or outdoors? Indoors, apart from the barn for your tasting area, what other structures constitute indoors?
Tasting areas.
Yeah, I believe it to be the barn, unless if someone erected a marquee, that would be also considered indoors.
Yes, I wondered if that might be the case, because I was thinking about the possible use of live or recorded music and whether it would be in the barn or in the marquee. So it could be in both, I suppose. And I wondered where on the site you might consider for staging for live or recorded music.
So it'd be in the barn.
Yes.
And in the marquee. So if there was a wedding,
okay,
in the marquee.
Okay, fine, thank you, Brian Markey. I was looking at your response to section J on page 25 of the application. Find that page again myself. I found that a little confusing. What do you actually mean in that section? Is the wine to be sold online, stored on site? I suspect not, unless it's for immediate consumption.
No, the wine will be stored on site. So fulfilment will be from the actual vineyard itself.
When you're handling the orders?
That's right, yeah. So fulfilment at the moment will be from the barn. If capacity rises, then we'll look at specific fulfilment companies that can hopefully deliver our wines across the GB. That's the intention.
Yes, so you'd be hoping for a national market.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So will you be serving food like breakfast from the tasting area of the new barn?
No, there's not plans actually to serve food from there as yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And how many bar areas, page 35? it might simply be the barn itself and the marquee.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much for answering our questions.
Just going back to food, because breakfast is not included, but food will be served from the site. If we did a barbecue or we did a tasting, there would be lunch and supper clubs.
Right. I think you implied that your glampers might come in for breakfast, or did I misread that?
Yes. So at the moment we don't have kitchen facilities. So if they did, it would be a continental style breakfast.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Jolly good. Thank you. Would the licensing officer like to ask any questions?
Could I come back, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go on.
Oh, thank you. It was just something that Sue highlighted, but to the applicant. I'm right in trying to remember and seeing from the pictures on page 41 that the clampers and marquees and that will be further down the bottom, the furthest part away from the houses. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. So the glampers will be, absolutely.
Right.
The marquee for any wedding will be at the top of the site.
Nearer the church end.
That's correct.
Church end. Sorry, church
end. That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. That's answered my point.
Okay. Right, would the licensing officer, David, have any questions?
I don't, Chair.
No. Okay. Sasha Walker, would you have any questions?
No questions. No, I was going to ask Sue where she goes to get one for breakfast, but that's been clarified. Thank you.
Simon, do you have any?
Not at present, no, thanks.
Okay. Sasha, would you like to make your statement then, please?
Yes, I would. I'd start by saying I'm a full-time resident here, right in the middle of the vineyard. The applicant have made, it's a huge commitment that they have to this and a huge commitment to the area. I'm able to observe actually how much work goes into the vineyard and how much it's going to need to be sustainable, how much the vineyard could bring to the community, how much it could bring in terms of jobs, which I know that we're all quite keen on the future financially. And I think that this is a big trust exercise on both sides. I would say the vineyard owners have been incredibly considerate of the neighbours. With each element of the planning, which although I only moved in August, I was very aware of because I was considering moving in. They sought to allay everybody's fears. They're very approachable. They're around all the time because they live here. And you can go and ask them, why is this here? What's this point? And if one can trust them to answer those questions, then I think one can trust them to get on with it efficiently and properly. One of the things that I put in my representation was that the area of outstanding natural beauty and the integrity of the area is what's going to make this business so attractive. And I don't think the applicants are going to be doing anything to jeopardise that. I would also like to go through a few points that have been raised in some of the other representations. Things like traffic and people driving in who don't know where they're going. We already have a church on the site which holds weddings and holds funerals. And as locals, we have to be aware that there are people driving to weddings and funerals who don't know where they're going. And in fact, the only people to be affected by extra traffic that isn't currently coming to the church would be those coming down the track. And I live down the track. We will know that events are coming. We will be able to plan for it. The owners are very open about everything that's going on. And we're always able to plan for things. And they've been building, if they've had any construction vehicles coming, they've let us know in advance so that we can get cars out and get our own deliveries in. There's been no problem with any of that. And as for live music, I think that this is one of the things that can really, it's damage limitation. You have to look at what they're trying to do here. If you've booked a wedding and you've booked a string quartet to play the bride at the aisle, and something happens and those guys can't turn up, are you going to leave the bride with no music, or are you going to put some live music on and save the day? People spend a lot of money on their weddings, and they have a certain level of requirement and expectation And it's not going to suit business if they can't fulfill that expectation. And they need to be sustainable. They need to be able to diversify. They have planning permission for weddings. They have conditions in place in the planning permission. They are well aware that the planning permission is the top consideration. As the licensing officer mentioned, that trumps everything. So in applying for a license, my understanding is that they need to try and cover every eventuality, and that sometimes that means that the licensing looks like more than they have planning for. But planning will always trump, and I know that they will adhere to that. I don't think that there's going to be any particular nuisance. I think we can all plan for it. I trust the owners. I think that's really all that I have to say. I'm very enthusiastic about this. I live in the middle of it. I've got lots of points here, but I don't think they need making. I think they're building this business. The license is an absolute no-brainer. There is no point in making this wine if they can't sell it. I live next door to a former winery where there was a barn in the garden next door where the wine was made. It was bottled. It was stored. So there was precedent. We've also got precedent from the Rinches Barns for weddings. The people at number 5 had a wedding at the Rinches Barns. So we all know how it works. And I think we should just go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Simon, would you like to do your statement, please?
Yeah, thanks. Just by way of introduction, I'm a resident, live close to the church, so I'm about 70 metres from the boundary of the site. First thing I'd like to say is that I'm very supportive of what Craig and Charlotte are doing. I think they're doing a fantastic job. I want to see this be a huge success. I'm looking forward to enjoying the facilities myself. So my starting position is that I would very much like them to have a license. I quite completely agree with what Charlotte said, that it's, as a business, it needs to have diversification. Clearly, a lot of entertainment requires an alcohol license. So I'm very much in favour of a license being issued for the site. It's simply a question of the conditions that are imposed upon it. We've heard a lot about trust. I would like to say that as close neighbours to Craig and Charlotte, I completely trust what they say. They've made a large number of commitments and reassurances, both in writing and verbally, and I completely trust that. But we do have to remember that this license is being issued to Goldcrest. It's a company, it's a corporate entity, which can be sold at any time. Now, I sincerely hope that that will never happen, that Craig and Charlotte will continue to run this business long after I'm dead and buried. But it is a company, they could sell it at any time. And so the trust that we have in them as individuals is not particularly relevant, because any day the company could be sold and could be run by somebody else who is not invested in the local community and so on. So I think we need to remember that. So it's not a personal thing at all. I completely trust what they say, but the reality is Craig and Charlotte Goldcrest rather are the fourth owners of the vineyard in a period of less than 15 years. It's a precarious business. I'm very confident that they're going about it in a much more business-like way than their predecessors have done because of this diversification. But nevertheless, business is always precarious. The company could be sold at any time. So we're not talking about the trust we have in Craig and Charlotte at all. What we're talking about is a license that accrues to Goldcrest, which could be sold at any time. So that's a really important point. You'll have seen from my written objection, which I don't propose to go through in detail, that the key things that I'm concerned about are the sale and consumption of alcohol on the premises 24 hours a day. This is not just wine that's produced, it could be any alcohol, obviously. And again, reassurances are great, but any new owner of Goldcrest would not be bound by informal reassurances. So the idea of selling alcohol 24 hours a day in this fairly remote rural setting, which is a very quiet location, simply does not seem to be appropriate in terms of your requirement to prevent public nuisance. I think, as we all know, the consumption of alcohol can often lead to public nuisance, even in a busy environment. In a quiet rural environment, it could very easily do so, even if it is just about slightly raucous behaviour late at night, whatever it may be. I'm not necessarily talking about criminal behaviour, antisocial behaviour, simply high-spirited, boisterous behaviour, which is often associated with events where alcohol is served. So 24-hour alcohol sales, I think, is highly inappropriate. The Appendix D that went round with the documentation, I had not seen that at the time my objection was put in. I think it hadn't been published by that time. It's a useful document, and it's an interesting document. But I think we've just heard that the definition of indoors includes a marquee. Marquee would, I think, normally be at the top of the field, quite close to the church, and from a selfish point of view, close to my house and other houses. So I'm afraid the idea that alcohol could be served at a party in a marquee 24 hours a day in a quiet rural area strikes me as being inappropriate. So I am more than happy for a license to be issued for alcohol consumption both indoors and outdoors, but I do not think it's appropriate to do that, to allow that 24 hours a day. I think that the licensing authority, I think yourselves, should consider what would be a normal and acceptable thing in a quiet rural area. I think that in a marquee, obviously in terms of raucous behaviour and such like, you may as well be outdoors because there's no noise suppression there. So I think you should seriously consider imposing a time limit on the serving of alcohol, which I think could reasonably be 10:30 or 11 o'clock, and probably in the evening, probably earlier on a Sunday.
Sorry, Chair, we've gone past 5 minutes. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so, can you sum up then, please, Simon?
I shall finish very briefly. So that's the key point. Similarly, amplified music within a marquee, I think, would cause public nuisance almost inevitably. I would say that the license should be issued, but there should be stringent, appropriate time controls on both those two activities to ensure that public nuisance is prevented. On that basis, I'd be more than happy to withdraw my objection, but I think 24-hour alcohol sales and amplified music outdoors until 11:30 at night is not appropriate in this setting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Okay, Peter Beard, do you have any questions for Sasha to start with?
Right. No, I've got a question, I think, for Simon.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you that next. Do you have any questions for Simon?
Yeah, I did have one for Sasha, but I've forgotten it now, so it couldn't have been that important. But Simon, you say you lived near the church, and these marquees, if my memory serves me correct, are going to be the top end of the field, but looking from the bottom up towards the church. That's to the left, I think, if I'm right from memory. And then there's a churchyard, and then there's a road, and then the church is on the other side, and then you're across the road, I assume, in one of those houses along there. Is that correct? So I can just get an idea of whereabouts you are.
It's I'm not quite sure what you have in mind. The top of the field, I mean, it's quite a narrow field. The top of the field is where the marquee would be. and between my house and that marquee is effectively just the churchyard, the graveyard of the church. So it's 70. My house is 70 metres from the boundary of the site, with nothing intervening other than trees.
And the churchyard. Yeah.
And the churchyard.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is where I've envisaged it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sue Carpendale, do you have any questions for Sasha?
No, I don't.
Do you have any for Simon?
No, I don't, except just looking at Google Maps here, you'd be sort of between the War Memorial and Old Hall Road. Is that right, Simon?
No, that's not correct. If you look at Google Maps, sorry, I'm just going to try and get it up so I can talk you through it. But we are a house by itself on the other side of the church from the applicant site.
I see. Okay, got it.
So we are, sorry, I'm just looking at a map myself now, just so I don't mislead you. We are directly north of the where the marquee would be,
I see it.
Top of the field, north, slightly northwest.
Yes,
so if you look at Google Earth, you'll see the church building, and then to the north of that, you'll see a detached house standing by itself. That is our house, which, is, as I say, there are trees in the churchyard, but other than that, it's open land between ourselves and the marquee.
Yeah, I see it. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Well, Licensing Officer David, do you have any questions for Sasha?
No, Chair.
Any for Simon?
No, Chair.
No. Okay then. I'll move on to closing submission.
Chair.
Yeah.
You have to ask the applicant whether he has any questions for either the other persons.
All right, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Mills, do you have any questions for Sasha?
No questions.
No.
Any for Simon?
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good. I'll move on to the closing submission, so the licence officer can give a closing statement, please.
Chair, I just summarise the basis of your considerations are kept to the 4 licensing objectives and the recommendations which are part of the Licensing Act 2003.
Okay,
thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would Mr. and Mrs. Mills like to give a closing statement?
I think all we'd just like to add in terms of the 24 hours, that was there to accommodate late night refreshments for our glampers and our online sales. And we're under the impression that refreshments doesn't actually mean alcohol. So if there's conditions that allow us to sell alcohol online 24 hours and provide those conditions for our glampers and to serve cups of teas and coffees,
yes,
then yes, we would be accommodating to that. That's all we'd like to add, I think, Charlotte.
Okay, thank you all very much.
May I just come back on that point, Chairman, if I may?
Who's that?
This is Simon Hewitt.
Simon.
I think there may be a misunderstanding here, because section I in the licence is late night refreshment, which is cups of tea and coffee, whatever, 24 hours a day indoors. I'm perfectly happy with that. That's not the objection. The alcohol is separate. That's section J. It's the alcohol licence, late 24 hours, which is the concern of many residents. It's not serving cups of tea to glampers at midnight if it's a chilly night or whatever. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, I'll move on to exclusion of the public. So I've got a little bit to read out. On the basis that the subcommittee considers that the public interest in excluding the public outweighs the public interest in its deliberation being held in the public, it is resolved that under section 100A/4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for item 13 on the grounds that involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12 of the Act, on the grounds set in Regulation 14/2 of the Licensing Act 2003, hearing registration 205. So I now go into private session.
I will second that, Chairman.
Thank you. So we'll move, and I think Mr. and Mrs. Wills and Sasha and Simon have got to move to another meeting, have they? Or we move to another meeting?
So yourself, the committee members and the legal officer, you now need to leave this meeting and join your private session to deliberate. And everybody else can either wait here or we'll set a time for everybody to come back. Should we say half an hour? But of course you may not be back yourselves by then, and then we'll just wait for you.
Can I just be clear, Karen? Just explain, we've got to come out of this meeting and then I've got to join the licensing hearing deliberation in private. Is that correct?
That's the one. Yep, join that one, and then everybody else can either wait here or go away and come back in half an hour. And you may or may not be back in half an hour, but we'll wait for you. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll leave this meeting then.
Thank you.
past 15 minutes past, so we can go ahead now. Would you like to give the decision then, please, for me?
Certainly. Thank you for everyone's patience. The subcommittee have carefully considered this application, and they're satisfied that with the conditions in the operating schedule, together with the conditions included in Appendix D, together with one additional condition which they would like to impose, and the additional condition is that there shall be no sales of alcohol for consumption on the premises before 10 a.m. each morning. The reason for that additional condition is to avoid any confusion, as there is the 24-hour condition, permission to sell and to facilitate the online sales, but the members felt that that additional condition was required just to remove any uncertainty from when the sale of alcohol ends the previous night, as in accordance with one of the new conditions, and then again 10 o'clock the following morning. So therefore the application is granted subject to those conditions. There is a right of appeal to any person who's made the application or made a representation to the subcommittee on this application to appeal to the Magistrates Court within 21 days of the date of receiving notification of this decision. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Nigel. Well, that is the end of this meeting. Thank you all for participating, and we'll meet again. Meeting closed.
Say